So you are told, so we've said that a class is a capsule of a system that contains data and functions that can be inherited. And an object is an instance of a class which inherits the properties of a class. Okay. So develop a program that allows you, let's just have an example, develop a program that allows you to enter the marks, for 4 subjects of 4 students. In English, math, geo, and let's say chem. It then computes and displays the total and average marks for each student. Now imagine you're given such kind of a program or a scenario, and then you are told to give that, to represent that in a C++ program. Remember, you're first going to declare variables. So how many variables are you going to declare? You're going to declare 4 variables. So per student, you're going to declare the following variables. Per student, you're going to declare the following variables. The first variable is, you're going to declare 4 variables for 4 subjects, right? And then you're going to declare a variable for total marks and a variable for average. So that's a total of 6 variables for just one student, right? So for 4 students, you're going to declare many variables. 6 times 4, which is a total of 24 variables for all students. Can you see that? Now, the only problem, the problem with that is that it is memory inefficient, because we are declaring a lot of variables to store data of types that can be shared. For instance, if it is English, math, SWA, geo, total, and average, we can declare just one class to contain all those variables. So basically, a class is like a dynamic variable that stores other variables. Are we together? A class is like a dynamic variable that stores all other variables, and therefore different objects. And therefore, in this case, it is the students. The students, which will be the objects, are going to be just inheriting these particular data members of that class. So we are just going to declare 6 variables in that class, and then every student is going to be picking from those variables. Therefore, we don't have to declare 24 variables. We only declare one class containing 6 variables, and then we declare 2 objects. I mean, not 2 objects, but 4 objects. The objects which are students, all right? The students that are going to be using those data members, all right? Are we together? Now, let's do this in code so that it can be. I'm going to come back to this. So let's do something here in our code, which we are going now to learn how to do it. Now let's do this. Let me stop sharing that so that I can now share another. So let me share this screen here. Today I'm using Dev C++. It's just another IDE, okay? Just another IDE like the one which we were using, code blocks. The only difference is that it's just a different IDE, that's it, right? So I'm going to increase the font here so that you can actually see. I think it should be here, it's here. So let me increase the font so that you can actually see. All right, so there we go. So we have our program there. I'm just going to delete that. So you remember the syntax of a C++ program. Now, Where do you declare? Where do you declare class? You normally declare a class before the main function. Okay? So we are going to declare a class. We are going to call this class subjects. All right. Now, this class is the one which is going to end. The class has to end with a semicolon. And you see how the class looks like. This is how a class normally looks like. Okay. You normally declare it. Number one, you have to declare rules of variable declaration, the rules of class declaration. The first rule, the class should be declared outside the main function. And then the second rule, the class should be declared using a normal name, just like the rules of variable declaration, a normal name, the way you declare a variable, because a class is a variable containing variables. Are you together? It's a variable containing variables. So class subjects, and therefore inside here we're going to have the variables that are contained in that class, which can be shared by the different students, the different objects. And then the last rule, it has to end with a semicolon. Why? Because it's a variable. Just the same way you declare a variable, it ends with a semicolon. You end it with a semicolon. It's a dynamic variable. Okay, it's a variable like any other variable. So here, see what I'm going to do, because I need all these variables to be accessed globally within the code. I'm going to use the keyword public. Why is the keyword public important? I'm using the keyword public because public basically tells the compiler when the code runs or when the code is executed, then access them. All right, access all of them globally from within the code. Okay, now there are different methods of access, and there are three types of inheritance: public inheritance, private, and protected. And I'm going to get to that later. But for now, we are dealing with public because it is a keyword that we use when we are using classes and objects. Okay, so basically, so when we use public, I'm now going to declare the variables which are needed in that scenario of students. Okay, so we are saying that the first thing we have to do is to declare the variable. So I'm going to use float, and I'm going to declare all these variables. So float English, math, geo, chem, total, and average. I'm going to use AVG. Okay, can you see that? So float English, math, geo, chem, total, and average. Now, how many variables do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just 6. Yet, in the previous way of programming, without using classes and objects, we would have to declare 24. Why? Because we are having 4 students, right? 24. Okay. So, I'm going to come here. Now, inside here, I'm going to declare the object. So you declare the object inside the main method. All right? You declare the object inside the main method. So the objects are normally named they are normally named using or prefixing with the name of the class. You start with the name of the class. So if our class is called subjects, we're going to start subjects. We're going to start, remember C++ is case sensitive. So we're going to start subjects. We can call this student 1. Okay. And then subjects, student 2. We are declaring objects, just objects. And remember, we are declaring them just as you would declare a variable. All right. You use a data type and the name of the variable. So the data type we are using is the name of the class, right? In other words, this object student 1 is going to use these particular members, data members. Okay. And also this one. I'm just going to copy and paste. And then have those. All right. Or let me just have 2 students, okay? For starters, let me just have 2 students so that we don't have a very long program for starters. So let me just have 2 students. And these 2 students, each of them, we are being told we are going to enter the marks for each student. We're going to enter the marks for each student. So you normally come here. For instance, let's say those marks are already entered. Those marks are already defined. Yeah. So we can say student one. How do we now access this particular data members? You use the dot operator. You see the dot operator here. The dot operator. The dot operator is used to access the class. So student one dot, let's begin with English, is equals to 90 or 80, 70. Yeah. And then we do that for the same for all the other subjects. Okay. So student one dot math. Can you see now we are using these data members that are already in the class? Chem. Hope you can see this. So chem, then geography. So we have entered the marks for these students. So we can just change these ones. All right. So now we have entered the marks. We have entered marks for first student, or student one. Now let's now enter marks for student two. So entering marks for student two, basically just copy this, can just copy this and do the same. So you just change here, student two, student two, student two, student two, right? 80, 65, 70, 60, right? So we've entered marks for student two. Now, we can now calculate the total marks and average. So what do? You use the same name of the object, just the same way you used student one, the names of the object, student one, and here you use student two, student two. You use the same name, all right, to calculate. So you come here and say student one dot total. And you see when I just click that, it just brings, okay, because it already recognizes those members that are already in the class. Student one dot total is equals to, this is what you do. Student one dot math, student one dot math, and you see it just brings student one dot chem plus student one dot English. You just use them there, they're already there. Student one dot math, chem, English, and geo. Just that. And then you just come here and you copy and paste this for who? For student two. So student two, student two, student two, student two, student two. Hope you can see that. So that one will calculate what? The total marks and then the average. So you come here, you just say student one dot what? Dot average. You see that? So we are calculating average for student one. Student one dot average is equals to student one dot total divided by 4. Okay, and you do the same for student two. I'm just going to copy and paste this. Student two dot average is equals to student two dot total divided by 4. Now let's see how this runs. Compile and run. So let me run this. Just a minute. So I'm trying to run this. I'm having a challenge here. Just a minute. See if this will change anything. So as you can see here, I have added this particular code so that we can actually display the whatever we have calculated, okay, for student 1 and for student 2. Okay, so I'm going now to run it and see what kind of output it gives me. Yeah, I'm now able to see the output. Now let me share with you. Let me share with you the output so that you can see it. So you can see the output there. So can you see student 1 total marks 271, student 1 average 67.75, student 1 total marks. Oh, so I have not edited my output, so I need to edit my output. Okay, I need to edit my output. So I'm back here now so that I edit my output. So I have not edited this output. So student 2, and also here student 2, student 2. And because I need some space, we can just put a column there so that there can be a space in display, just for decency purposes, so we can look more decent. Okay, let me now run it so that you can see it. Okay. There we go. So let me share it. Let me share the output. I'm now sharing the output. So you can see how that looks like. Total marks, student 1 total marks 271, student 1 average 67.75, student 2 total marks 275, student 2 average 68.75. Can you see that? So there it is. Okay, then let me share the screen back here and demonstrate now what I was having. So the idea behind classes and objects is to basically minimize how many variables we are declaring so that we can have objects sharing the same variables. So you remember in the conventional way of programming, we would have a variable English for 2 students, a variable, 2 variables. So English, like student 1 English, student 2 English, student 1 math, student 2 math, student 1 geo, student 2 geo. But here we just have 1 English, 1 math, 1 geo, 1 chem, 1 total, and 1 average, and all of them are being shared. All right, they are being shared by each of the students. So that is the idea behind classes and objects, basically to minimize the amount of variables we are declaring to enable us to share variables. Hence, it reduces redundancy and also it's memory efficient. All right, and it also brings in the concept of inheritance. Okay, so how then can we then define or make? How then can we say the what is the syntax of declaring classes and objects? The syntax of declaring classes and objects is basically as follows. From what we've just done, the syntax would then basically be as follows. Okay? It would be as follows. First thing, you declare what? The preprocessor directive. So from what we've just discussed, as you've observed, we have first declared the preprocessor directive, which is hash include. I think I just have to copy and paste this instead of having to type all of it. So we first declare the hash include IOStream, the preprocessor directive. Then we declare the class itself. Then inside the main method, then we can have our actions, the different actions we need to perform. And then of course we have the return statement. So this is basically the syntax for what? The syntax for declaring classes and objects. You first begin by having the preprocessor directive. Then before you even declare the main method, you declare what? The class itself. Then the main method, ignore this. Okay, we can even have it just that way. Okay, then after having the main method, declare the objects. So here is the class, and here is the object. Here are the objects. Okay. So remember, very key things to remember: the dot operator. Okay. The dot operator. Okay. Dot operator, very important. Why? The importance of that operator is to be able to access a class member. Okay, so whatever you have inside here, inside the class, are called the members of the class. Okay, and those members can be data or what we call attributes, and it can also be functions or methods. Functions or methods are basically computations. All right, but for our program here, we didn't have a function or a method. We only had attributes. And attributes are known by their types, their data types. Like here we have how many attributes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have float for those attributes. Okay, so that is basically how we deal with classes and objects. Now let me give you a question, or just before I give you a question, could you ask a question where you have not understood? If you've not understood, you can ask your question. Anybody with a question?